Size and mass are variables. As we have actually said, they actually end up becoming irreversible when an organism grows. Quantitative permanent increase in size of an organism. Quantitative permanent increase in size of an organism. I am an organism, and you see, in this subject, we have two main types of organisms to discuss. We have unicellular organisms like yeast or an amoeba. They are actually microscopic or single-celled, and they are made up of a single cell. So having a look at the organisms requires the use of a powerful microscope with a high resolving power so that each and every part of the organisms can actually become easily seen or separated from each other. You see, if you look at the other category of organisms, we'll actually talk about multicellular organisms such as plants and animals, which are made up of many cells, millions of cells. So, from the environment, they can physically be seen without requiring the use of a microscope, unless otherwise you want to look at their cells in as far as their structures are concerned. And on the other hand, you can talk about development, and this will simply mean development will be able to mean qualitative. We are talking about qualitative change. There's a difference between quantitative and qualitative. You see, so if someone talks about growth, you are growing, you are increasing in size and mass. So if someone increases in size and mass, they are actually having a change which is quantitative in terms of quantity, size, and mass. For example, 10 kilograms and maybe 2.5 meters. So when the size of an individual increases, maybe in the waist or somewhere else in the body of an organism, and as well the mass of that organism increases, the organism has had a change which is quantitative in terms of quantity. You talk about the size increasing and the mass increasing. Maybe the waist size increases from 32 to 35 or 38. So 38, 35, 32 are numerical values. They'll always be able to give us a quantitative change. But if someone talks about qualitative, we do not actually capture anything relating to numerical values. We shall talk about qualitative aspect of growth. So qualitative change, development in the complexity of structures of an organism. Qualitative change in the complexity of structures of an organism, which is irreversible. So you are growing or there is growth. Obviously, there is what you call quantitative permanent increase. In terms of quantity, there is a permanent increase. You've increased in size, you've increased in mass. That is quantitative, and that is permanent. It is irreversible. Development, quality, in terms of quality, the structures of an organism becomes complex. So if you talk about development, we shall not look at the increase in size and mass. We're not looking at how the structures of the organism will actually become complex. You are a young child, your eyes could not be able to perceive well anything found in the environment. As you actually developed, to be very specific, your eyes became more complex. Your eyes became more developed. Your eyes became well structured to perceive organisms or to perceive anything within your environment. You were a young child, you could not be able to walk on your own. You see, you had to actually support yourself on any items in the environment or even an adult. But as you actually underwent changes in as far as development is concerned, you had a chance of your muscles in the hind limbs developing. As those muscles develop, then that means you are going to actually stand on your own, you see, and be able to walk around. So development will simply means quality. You are looking at the quality, like you had simple structures, but now the structures have become complex. That means the quality of your body structures have actually to get discussed here. So when the structures were simple and you underwent development, the structures became complex. The structures became more developed. So if the structures became more developed, that means the quality of the structures has increased. When the quality of the structures has increased, then that means there is development. So qualitative change in the complexity of structures of an organism, which is irreversible. As well, the structures of an organism can become complex, and when they have become complex, the changing of the structures, the development of the structures becoming complex is also an irreversible process. Someone else would say development, so you'll just say qualitative change. There's a change which is qualitative, not quantitative. We shall not consider the quantity. So there's a change which is qualitative in the structure of an organism. So the structure was initially simple when you were young, but as you have actually grown and as well developed now, you are actually able to have a complex structure. The structure has increased in quality. The structure has had some improvement. The structure has developed. You can also say development is the qualitative qualitative aspect of growth. Qualitative aspect of growth. Qualitative aspect of growth which involves differentiation, which involves differentiation of cells differentiation of cells to form, so of differentiation of cells to form tissues, differentiation of cells to form tissues. Development, qualitative, the structures become more developed, the structures become well developed, the structures become more complex, the structures have increased in their quality. So development is as well qualitative aspect of growth, because you'll grow and then develop. So growing means you're increasing in size and mass. And when someone increases in size and mass, then that means the number of cells will also increase. You had a single cell, and later on, that single cell underwent cell division. Of course, when an organism increases in size and mass, the type of growth the organism has to undergo is always associated with the type of cell division called mitosis. So look at this. So if I develop, I'll have qualitative aspect of growth, which involves differentiation of cells to form tissues. Now look at this. You are actually having a single cell initially. Then the cell divides to form two cells. These two cells further divide to form four cells. At the end of the day, you end up having millions of cells. Now what has happened? When the number of cells increase, when the number of cells increase, when the number of cells do increase, what happens here? When the number of cells increase, you have grown. There is growth. There is irreversible increase in size and mass. You've increased in size and the mass of the whole organism has also increased. Look at that. So growth. irreversible increase in size and mass of an organism. But now later on, you'll realize that development is now qualitative. That means these cells are going to form tissues or structures. You see? So these structures are initially simple, but now as the organism further undergoes growth, it will develop. Developing means there's qualitative change in the complexity of the structure. So initially, the structures are simple, but at the time as the organism develops, there's qualitative change in the complexity of those structures of this organism. And this change from simple structures to complex structures becomes irreversible. You can also say qualitative aspect of growth, which involves differentiation of cells. So these cells are initially undifferentiated or unspecialized, but because of development, there's that aspect of the cells becoming differentiated. The cells become specialized, and as they become specialized, they'll form tissues. So, qualitative aspect of growth, which involves differentiation of cells to form tissues. So the cells are differentiated to form tissues, and that is growth. Very good. Now, you also need to understand this, that for growth to occur, there must be this. So I guess you can be able to see this. For growth to occur, one, the cells of organisms assimilate nutrients, hence increase in mass. So cells assimilate, or you can as well say make use of nutrients, hence increasing in mass. Now look at this. There's something called nutrition. In biology. That means you are actually going to acquire nutrients and assimilate them. A characteristic of both plants and animals as living organisms, with the other categories of living organisms, where nutrients are first acquired, then later on they are assimilated or utilized by the body. To mean, purposely, growth and development relies on the acquisition of nutrients. I must first acquire nutrients, then the body makes use of those nutrients. The body utilizes the nutrients. And when the body utilizes the nutrients, then there's growth and development. So first, when the nutrients are acquired, the cells do take the nutrients, and after taking the nutrients, they actually assimilate them. They actually make use of the nutrients, and that brings about increase in mass, which is growth. Now, once the cells have actually acquired nutrients and assimilated the nutrients, what happens? There is cell division. There is cell division. There is cell division. And I told you, for growth to occur, the type of cell division to be captured here is called mitosis. So the type of cell division that can actually make an organism to grow or increase in size and mass or have the cells increasing in number is called mitosis. So as a cell, I must first get the nutrients. I actually end up then having what you call cell division occurring in me. And that type of cell division, we shall refer to it as mitosis. So when cell division occurs, preferably mitosis, then the number of cells increase. The number of cells increase. The number of cells increase. I acquired the nutrients. I have undergone cell division because I have now the nutrients, and I'll actually have the number of cells increasing. Then the cells have actually increased in number. Then increasing the cells in number alone cannot make an organism to increase in size and mass. What happens? Cells expand or cells enlarge. So the cells acquired nutrients, they assimilated the nutrients, they underwent cell division, preferably mitosis. Then the cells which have actually increased in numbers will now end up expanding or enlarging. Okay? And at the end of the day, an organism an organism increases in volume and size. An organism increases in volume and in size. Those are just the brief concepts that you can actually get introduced to by a teacher teaching biology, so that you can be able to know how a cell ends up undergoing changes. So we've said the cell must first acquire nutrients, then be able to assimilate the nutrients or make use of the nutrients, of course, to get energy. Once the cells have actually used the nutrients to get energy, the cells end up undergoing cell division or mitosis. After that, the resulting cells must expand. When they expand or they actually enlarge, they'll make the organism to grow or increase in size, mass, and volume. Now, on to something else. Let me just look for a space. Okay, so we'll proceed to something else. And what I want us to actually look at is this. We want to look at the parameters. Parameters we can use. Parameters to use to detect growth in organisms. Detect growth in organisms. In other words, what can I use to show that this organism has actually grown or developed? You see, how do we measure growth in living organisms? Students, we will use one, mass. In 2022, you are weighing 30 kilograms. In 2024, you are weighing 40 kilograms. That is growth. You've increased in size and mass. Of course, at the end of the day, you've actually undergone growth. So any slightest increase in mass can confirm that there's growth. Number two, you can use volume. You've actually had a chance of calculating volume of maybe solids like cuboids. You are told maybe the volume of a particular solid like a cuboid is 10 centimeters cubic. Then the volume of another cuboid is 50 centimeters cubic. They are of different sizes, so the volume is different. The bigger the volume, the higher the chances of confirming that growth has actually occurred. You see, compared to the previous volume of the same solid. So number two, you'll talk about length. Just try to pick up an example of a plant, maybe which is horizontally placed on the ground. And the initial length of the plant was maybe 20 centimeters. Then after some time, the plant has horizontally increased in size to maybe 30 centimeters. That confirms growth. An increase in length can confirm growth. Your fingers were maybe very short when you're still young. You've actually grown. The length of the fingers has increased. That confirms growth. And of course, height. You were young, only having maybe 30 centimeters. Of course, it is not even possible. You can talk about maybe 40 centimeters. Then later on, you end up learning that you're actually 1.8 meters. You've actually grown. Any increase in height of an individual, whether plant or an animal, can confirm growth to us. We'll talk about surface area. Surface area. Surface area is also a parameter that one can use to confirm that growth has occurred in an organism, be it a plant or an animal. Surface area. Surface area. Surface area is a parameter that you can use to confirm that growth has occurred in an organism. Now, you see, when someone talks about development, it is very hard for us to confirm that quantitatively. So scientists have actually ended up confirming development by just trying to look at how structures have become complex. You see, it is easier for me to know that you have actually grown because it's actually all about increasing in size and mass. And once I look at your height, I look at your mass, I look at your volume, I look at your length, I look at your surface area. That tells me that you've actually grown. But now, how do you actually confirm that development has occurred? You see, it is difficult, and I don't think there's any parameter, unless otherwise, that you can be able to use to confirm that development has occurred. How do I tell that? The cells have undergone differentiation to form tissues because that is development. How do I confirm that this organism has undergone development? The only measure that you can take to ensure that you can confirm that development has occurred is by looking at the way the structures are complex. When you're still young, your body structures are always simple, but as you develop, the structures become complex. So a measure scientists can use to confirm that or to measure how development has occurred is this: looking at the complexity of the structures of that organism. Now, to proceed forward, so how do we determine that development has occurred? You can confirm that development has occurred by looking at the complexity of the structures. Complexity of the structures. But parameters to detect growth: mass, volume, length, height, surface area, and others. On to something else. You see, a human being like I, taking you through this topic, and animals like cows, dogs, donkeys, lions, leopards, tigers, cheetahs, and others are multicellular. To mean their bodies or our bodies as animals are made up of millions of cells. And you see, what has actually ended up giving us these millions of cells? Scientists will always tell you this, that initially an ovum is an egg from the female's reproductive system. We have a type of reproduction called sexual reproduction. With sexual reproduction, we shall always have the male and the female. The male produces the male gametes. The female produces the female gametes. The male gametes are produced, for example, by the testis in human beings. The testis is a gonad, a reproductive organ. The female gametes, like the egg or the ovum, is produced by the ovary. The ovary in man, for example, in human beings, is also a gonad, a reproductive organ. So the ovum or the egg, and on the other hand, the sperm cell are produced by 1. Ovary, 2. Testis. And I told you that in the ovary and in the testis, we have also a type of cell division that can form these female and male gametes. That type of cell division that forms these gametes is referred to as meiosis. So meiosis is a type of cell division that actually forms the male and female gametes. Meiosis. So we actually want to know the meaning of this. Meiosis is a type of cell division that can actually end up giving us the male gametes and the female gametes, both in the testes and in the ovary, respectively. And to proceed forward, when the male and the female fuse, as you have actually known this, in a topic called reproduction, they form a single cell called a zygote. Look at that. They form a single cell called a zygote. The zygote has both the male nucleus from the sperm cell and the female nucleus from the ovum. So a zygote has a male nucleus from the sperm cell from the male reproductive system and a female nucleus from the ovum from the female reproductive system. This zygote undergoes cell division. Now, the zygote is actually undergoing cell division for us to form an organism. For example, if a zygote undergoes cell division, it will first form two cells. Look at that. The two cells will further undergo cell division to form more cells. And the division of a zygote to first form two cells and further form 4 cells and further form 8 cells and further form 16 cells and further form 32 cells is going to be referred to as geometric division. In mathematics, you must have been taught about series and sequence. You had arithmetic progression and geometric progression. If I first had a single cell, then the cell divided to give me 2 cells. The 2 cells further divided to give me 4 cells. This is a geometric progression in terms of cell division. So remember, the zygote is a single cell made up of a male and a female nucleus. And it has divided to give us 2 cells, and further divided to give us 4 cells, and further 8 and 16 and 32 and 64. At the end of the day, we're going to have millions of cells forming now the organism to be actually end up getting discussed further in other areas in biology. So this is geometric. Now look at this. The mass of cells that will get formed here will be referred to as morula. The mass of cells that will get formed here will be referred to as morula. So morula is a mass of cells formed when the zygote undergoes geometric cell division. Look at that. Now, and these first cell divisions, maybe from a single cell, now the zygote, to 2 cells, then to further 4 cells, then to further 8, 16 up to 64, even millions of cells, will be referred to as cleavages. Cleavages. The first cell divisions that form a mass of cells called morula will be referred to as cleavages. Sometimes someone can ask you to differentiate between morula and cleavages. Cleavages are the first cell divisions that form a mass of cells when an organism has cells dividing, or when a zygote undergoes cell division. So the first cell divisions of a particular cell to form a mass of cells is called cleavages. Then the mass of cells formed when a single cell undergoes cell division will be referred to as morula. Okay, guess that difference is clear to you. Now, to move forward, we'll also understand that the morula develops a hollow part. The morula develops a hollow part. So this is our morula. If I may just make a sketch of that. This is our morula. It has developed a hollow part. So the morula develops a hollow part, resulting into a structure called blastula. So this structure is called blastula, or you can also refer to it as blastocyst. We had a zygote. It divided into 2 cells. The 2 cells further divided to give us 4 cells. The 4 cells further to 8. 8 cells further to 16. 16 cells further to 32 cells. Then further to 64, and then millions of cells. So those cell divisions giving us these many cells are called cleavages. Then the mass of cells to be actually obtained from these cell divisions will be referred to as morula. That mass of cells going to be referred to as morula will develop a hollow part. Once it has developed a hollow part, it's no longer morula. It gets referred to as blastula or blastocyst. Now, this blastocyst or blastula will later differentiate into an inner layer, which is referred to as endoderm. Look at that. And an outer layer, which is referred to as an ectoderm. So the morula develops a hollow structure. That hollow structure gets referred to as blastula or blastocyst. The blastula or blastocyst, in terms of its structure, will develop an inner layer called endoderm and an outer layer called ectoderm. And that hollow part will be referred to as blastocoele. So you have the blastula or the blastocyst forming an outer layer ectoderm, forming an inner layer endoderm, and a blastocoele as now that hollow part that the morula developed, blastocoele. Very good. So you have the blastocoele as now the hollow part that we can be able to clearly see. Now, This two-layered structure, will implant itself in the uterine wall. We are actually assuming that these two people had sexual intercourse. The penis introduced the sperm cells into the female's reproductive system. The sperm cells, after a suction to the cervix, had to actually undergo swimming to find their way into the oviduct. In the oviduct, they found an egg from the ovary. Fertilization occurred in the oviduct or fallopian tube. After fertilization had actually occurred, that meant that the male nucleus from the sperm cell and the female nucleus from the egg or ovum fused, and that process is called fertilization to form a zygote. The zygote divided to give us two cells. The two cells further divided to give us four cells. The four cells further divided to give us 8 and further 16, 32, 64, up to millions of cells. The mass of cells formed from that is what we refer to as morula. The cell divisions giving us this mass of cells, we call them cleavages. Then you've said that morula divides or actually undergoes differentiation to give us a blastula or blastocyst, with a hollow part getting called blastocyst, and then with an ectoderm and an endoderm as the two layers. Then we have said that this hollow part implants itself in the uterus or the uterine lining. Remember, in the uterus, you have two layers. You have what we call the myometrium, and the endometrium. The myometrium and the endometrium. So, the blastula with the two layered parts implants itself in the uterine wall, consisting of two layers, the myometrium and the endometrium. So, once it has implanted itself in the lining of the uterus, it begins to obtain nutrients from the maternal blood. So it actually starts to grow and develops into a fetus, which will translate into a newborn baby. Now, blastula has implanted itself into the lining of the uterus. It is no longer going to be called blastula again. It actually ends up getting now referred to as an embryo. So the embryo is the one going to obtain nutrients from the lining of the uterus. The embryo is the one going to actually grow and develop. The embryo is the one going to undergo changes. The embryo is the one going to actually form many cells. The embryo is the one going to have the cells increasing in size. So when the embryo grows and develops, it will actually increase in the number of cells and the sizes of cells. And at the end of the day, those cells will differentiate to give us tissues. So increasing in the number of cells and in the sizes of cells is growth. And forming different cell types is development, because the cells are the ones differentiating or specializing to give us particular cell types. Okay. These processes, development and growth, will make an organism to change in its morphology. Morphology means the outward appearance of an organism. The organism from outside will get seen to have increased in size and mass. That is development. Then also, the organism will actually have a change in its physiology. Physiology changes because the organism has developed. So physiological changes in the developing young organism results into an adult. So morphology in terms of the outward appearance or in terms of the structures of the organism increasing in size and mass. Physiology to mean the organism has had its cells differentiating or specializing to give us particular types of cells which can perform specific functions. For example, a nerve cell to conduct nerve impulses. Red blood cells to transport oxygen from one part of the body to another. For example, from the lungs to other parts of the body. White blood cells to actually protect the body against pathogens which can cause infections. The skeletal muscle cells to contract and relax to bring about movement. Now, at the end of the day, the cells have differentiated. The cells have specialized, and that is development. Now, in other words, in the early stages to me, when the organism is still growing, in the early stages of growth and development, the cells are of the same size, the cells are of the same type. But as the organism grows, the cells increase in size. As the organism develops, the cells specialize, the cells differentiate, and they actually end up becoming different from each other. To move forward, to move forward, to move forward, the cells differentiate and specialize to form what? Tissues. Those tissues perform different functions. So in other words, growth just helps an organism to synthesize new material because the cells increase in number. When the cells increase in number, a new material has been formed. You had one cell. When the cell divided, it gave us maybe 10 cells. Those 10 cells have actually resulted in the formation of a new material. And that is growth. For growth to occur, what must be available? Number one, there must be oxygen. Two, there must be nutrients. Why? You see, I don't expect a cell to divide and yet there's no oxygen, there's no nutrients. Because cells divide, cells grow, cells develop or specialize or become differentiated when there's energy. Cells need energy for them to grow. Cells need energy for them to divide. So that means nutrients such as glucose must be available. Oxygen must be available. Why do we need nutrients and oxygen? The nutrients such as glucose must be able to get broken down chemically in the presence of oxygen as a gas, an active part of air, so that we can produce energy. The energy produced is the one responsible for the cell division process, for us to form many cells and bring about growth in the organism. Apart from this, there must be water. And apart from water, you can also talk about warmth. So these are factors necessary for growth to occur. So factors necessary during growth. Factors necessary during growth. So factors necessary during growth include nutrients, oxygen, water, and warmth. For example, nutrients and oxygen will undergo a chemical process, respiration, in the mitochondrion so that energy can get produced for the cells to divide adequately because they require energy for them to divide. The water will provide a medium for the metabolic processes to occur in the cells. So water provides a medium in the cell for metabolic processes to occur when the cell wants to divide or when the cell is dividing. The warmth is just all about temperature change. Remember, respiration is a process where food is chemically broken down to produce energy for the cell. So when the food gets chemically broken down to produce energy for the cell, then that means there must be warmth. Why? This process called respiration is an enzyme controlled process. The enzymes controlling respiration are referred to as respiratory enzymes. And these enzymes must be activated. There must always be what you call an optimum temperature so that the process can actually be able to occur at a faster rate. Why? Enzymes are activated, and once enzymes become activated, they speed up the process of breaking down the food in the presence of oxygen for the cells to get energy faster. For the cells to get energy faster. Now, just in case I may want to talk about growth in animals. So we expect to have nutrients, oxygen, water, and warmth for the process to occur. And remember, sometimes water can activate the enzymes within the cell so that when those enzymes become activated, they speed up the process of respiration when the food gets broken down in the presence of oxygen. When energy is there, the cells can actually be able to divide rapidly and bring about growth. In animals, the type of growth we may actually want to capture here is called intercalary growth. Animals do always have a type of growth called intercalary growth. Intercalary growth. Intercalary growth. So the type of growth in animals is called intercalary growth, where growth takes place all over the body. Growth takes place all over the body of these animals. So intercalary growth is a type of growth where growth occurs in all parts of the body. of the organism, in all parts of the body of the organism, in all parts of the body of the organism. So growth occurs in all parts of the body of the organism. Yes, that is what you're supposed to have. Yeah, okay, it's correct. So growth occurs in all parts of the body of the organism. Correct. So growth occurs in all parts of the body of the organism. But the rate differs. But the rate differs in the various parts. Differs in the various parts. But the rate differs in the various parts. So what does that mean? That I have the head region, I have the neck region, I have the ears, I have the palms of my hand, the soles of my feet, I have my stomach, I have my backbone, I have my thighs, and I have my biceps and triceps. You see, there's growth in each and every part of my body as an organism, as an animal actually. But now the rates of growth in these parts will differ. The rates of growth in these parts will actually differ. I don't expect areas with a higher rate of friction to have the same rate of growth as those parts with a lower rate of free friction. That tells you that in some parts of the bodies of animals, like the soles of feet and the palms of hand, the rate of cell division, the rate of growth is very high. Why? Because those parts will always rub against each other, or for example, the soles of feet will rub against the ground when someone walks. The hands are actually able to manipulate objects. We always clap, we always hold items in our environment, we always try to tighten items, we always carry items, we always rub hands against each other. We are actually having a high rate of friction in the palms of our hands and the soles of feet. So to replace the lost cells, when we rub against the environment within our body parts, against our body parts, we expect those cells to get replaced. Those cells are going to be replaced by a high rate of cell division. So in the palms of hand and soles of feet, the rate of cell division is high. The rate of growth is high. That's why the skin, or the layers of the skin, or those parts are thicker. The parts are thicker because the rate at which cells divide in those parts is very high to replace the lost cells, because there's a higher rate of friction in those parts. There's some parts, like maybe the membranes within our body parts, having a low rate of cell division because there's a lower rate of friction. So few cells are lost at the end of the day. So the rate of cell division in those areas might actually be very low than the way we actually experience the same cell in the soles of feet and palms of our hands. Now, if we turn to maybe just something small in as far as growth and development in plants is concerned, you should realize that plants have what we call apical growth. Apical growth to mean that growth occurs in the apex. So apical growth, that means growth mainly occurs in the shoot tip and root tip. So growth occurring in the tip of the root and in the tip of the shoot of the plant is called apical growth. So the root tip has a high rate of cell division and the tip of the shoot also has a high rate of cell division. Those two parts will actually make us to call this type of growth apical growth. So growth occurring in the root tip and in the shoot tip is referred to as apical growth. So in plants, growth and cell division mostly takes place at the root tip, just behind the root cap and the stem apex. At the apex of the stem, that is now the shoot tip, that gives us a qualification or a go ahead to call this type of cell division or this type of growth apical growth. Now, when the shoot tip grows or ends up having a high rate of cell division, and as well the root tip ends up having a high rate of cell division, the plant will lengthen, the plant will increase in size. the plant will actually increase in size or lengthen. Now, so this leads to lengthening of the plant. Lengthening of the plant. Lengthening of the plant. So the plant increases in height, but the plant lengthens when there's apical growth. Growth occurring in the shoot tip and in the root tip. Now, another type of growth that can occur in plants is called secondary growth. And remember, this apical growth is also referred to as primary growth. So you can call it apical growth or primary growth, preferably because it occurs in the tip of the shoot and in the tip of the root. But sometimes we can also be able to encounter growth in the stem. So when growth gets encountered in the stem, it gets called secondary growth. It gets called secondary growth. So growth occurring in the stem is referred to as secondary growth. And this type of growth can actually increase increase the width. So this type of growth increases the width stroke girth of the stem. Increase the width stroke girth of the stem. Increase the width stroke girth of the stem. So when the plant increases in height, that is apical growth or primary growth occurring in the shoot tip and root tip. When the plant increases in size, the plant widens, the stem increases in size, there is increase in width or girth. That obviously means that is growth occurring in the stem, and that type of growth is called secondary growth. So growth in the stem to increase the width or girth or size of the stem is referred to as secondary growth. And remember, whether the growth in plants is apical or primary or secondary, remember this. This type of growth will only occur if this type of cells are available. These cells are called cambium cells. So the cells bringing about growth in plants are referred to as cambium cells. Cells bringing about growth in plants are referred to as cambium cells. Cambium cells are the cells that can bring about growth. That means the cambium cells undergo rapid cell division, either in the shoot tip or stem apex or in the root tip or in the stem itself. When the cells divide, they increase in size. That is growth and mass. When the cells have increased in size, they can now become specialized. Once the cells become specialized or differentiated, they will now get to that point of making us to refer to that faster process as development. So growth increase the number of cells and their sizes. Development let the cells specialize or differentiate so that they can end up becoming differentiated. So they will perform different functions. That is development.